Hello and welcome to today's video. So today we are going to explore Miyamoto Musashi's Fire chapter in the Book of Five Rings. Now this chapter I feel is especially difficult for people who don't have a martial arts or a combative background, because if you just read it, it's easy to take it as it's just about conflict. We're going to explore it a little bit because there are things that are applicable again to daily life, and that's what this series is about. Years ago I loaned one of my translations of this book to a good friend of mine. He was a very intelligent guy, and we talked a lot about philosophy and things. And I was quoting this book a lot, so he wanted to read it, so I loaned him a copy. And it frustrated him because he was like, it's just about swords, and he didn't practice any kind of swordsmanship or anything like that. So, but there are lessons here that we can apply to business and relationships and just daily life. So we're going to explore those. Now in this chapter, Musashi introduces the concept of initiative, and he talks a lot about initiative. He describes the mind of taking initiative in everything. And he lays out three different types of initiative. Now, it's important to understand that by initiative he doesn't mean just pure aggression. Okay? Obviously with his subject he's talking about conflict. There are times when aggression is really important, but he describes the initiative of taking the initiative, meaning acting first, before the other person can do anything effective. He talks about the initiative of waiting, and then the initiative of acting at the same time as someone else. So for our discussion today, I'm going to focus on the initiative of moving first, and I'm going to talk about the initiative of waiting. When he talks about the initiative of waiting, he's not talking about being passive. He's talking about understanding what's happening and being ready to do what you need to do when the appropriate moment comes. So this is important because if we're thinking about being aggressive all the time in all situations, we're not always going to do what's appropriate. And in studying this book and studying other books of people who lived through hard times and learned hard lessons, what you'll find, a commonality that you'll find throughout a lot of these texts, is people who can do what is appropriate at the time are more successful overall than people who only have one mode of doing things. So in Musashi's view, understanding the initiative of waiting is as important as understanding the initiative of being the first one to act. In the initiative of waiting, what's important to him is that when the time comes to act, you act. So it's not it's not a passive thing. You're not sitting there waiting, hoping something's going to work out. It is understanding what you need to do and what you're going to do, and then doing it when it's appropriate. So taking the lessons that he describes and applying that to business and life and relationships, and not exclusively to conflict, what we find is in every section of this chapter, what Musashi is really getting at is you have to understand the other person's point of view, their perspective. Now obviously in his book he's not talking about that from the standpoint of getting along with them and coming to some kind of resolution with them. He's talking about defeating them, and he's really specific about that. But how we can apply this to things outside of conflict are when we get into business situations, relationship situations, whatever it is. If we have the ability, if we foster the capacity to understand other people's point of view and not just be fixated on what's going through our heads and what we want, we're more likely to come to some kind of conclusion that's beneficial for everyone. So that can be difficult for a lot of people, but if you read the chapter, every single section that he goes through, it comes down to understanding what's in the other person's mind. In the case of his book, it's understanding what's in the other person's mind so you can exploit it. Obviously, that's not applicable to all situations in everyday life. But if we foster the ability to understand what is in other people's minds, we will get better results in dealing with relationships and business and everything else if we are willing to see what other people are thinking about and trying to work with those things. So part of what I would like you to get out of the Fire chapter is understanding that the psychology of situations is very important. Understanding what you're thinking about is critical, and understanding what other people are thinking about, regardless of what you're dealing with, is critical as well. So If you find yourself in a situation and you don't understand what's happening, or if you're confused about the outcome or something like that, trying to understand another person's perspective won't necessarily make you happy, but it can give you clarity. And sometimes clarity is all we're going to get. This is the fire chapter and it's about conflict, so I'm going to end with a quote from the book. But he says, "The true way of swordsmanship is to fight with your opponent and win, and this should not be changed in the slightest." Now again, I'm putting this series together to give people lessons they can use from Musashi for everyday life, not exclusively for conflict. But I think how we can apply that quote to everyday life is we should be trying to win. And when we're looking at initiative and how initiative applies to everyday life, when you look around the world today, you see a lot of people who don't know how to take initiative. They're waiting for people's approval, or they're waiting for things to happen for them. They're waiting for things to work out. Understanding initiative and how you can apply it can really make a big difference in life, and it can set you apart in a lot of ways. So in business and relationships, if you learn how to take initiative and when to take initiative, it can really help. So I think in trying to understand what initiative means and understanding the initiative of acting and the initiative of waiting, having a broad view on things, and Musashi talks about this a lot, having a broad view on things and not being fixated on things being a certain way, but having the intent of winning, basically, whatever it is. And that doesn't mean that, when I say winning, that doesn't always mean that you're trying to be, that you're going to be right all the time. It means that, sometimes winning means admitting that you were wrong about something. So if you give some thought to the concept of taking initiative and understanding that sometimes initiative means just acting, and sometimes initiative means waiting but with a plan to act and being ready to act when the time is appropriate, you will find a lot of situations where this will apply to daily life, business, relationships, whatever. So, I have used up all my words for the day. I'm done. I will not speak again until sometime tomorrow, or possibly the day after that, because I work from home and I don't always have to talk to people. And my dog doesn't care. So, I'm done. Go read a book.